Today, it is about trends. That's right. And my goodness, you either love them, hate them, or you sit on the fence with them. But today is about the top trends that you're going to need to know about in 2023. It is all about the squeezing the lemons this year, isn't it? And we're going to do that today with our amazing guest who's going to be joining us, who is an absolute expert. His name is Jack, and he's going to be coming here he's the head of trends, by the way, at Insider Trends. It's basically a trend spotting agency, and he's going to come on and help us really focus in on what we need to concentrate on and what we might be seeing. So Jack is going to talk to us about basically us having this crystal ball. We can help almost see with today's episode, but also just generally, what are customers looking out for? So they're going to be seeing stuff happening on the high street, and before, it's all subconscious, isn't it? Suddenly they're into gemstones. Suddenly they love purple. They hated purple before. And this is what happens. It sort of seeps into our everyday life. Now, either love it or hate it, you can ignore it. But what you have to know is what they are to be able to ignore it or to be able to jump on it. Also, it's interesting, isn't it, seeing what other retailers are going to do. I've always found that not to copy, but to understand the temperature, understand the sort of, what they're spending their marketing money on, things like that. So the future vision is what we're going to be concentrating on, forecasting what maybe social, societal things that change, cultural changes that happen, don't they? Environmental shifts. If we just go back, and thank goodness it's not a trend anymore because our world is on fire. But if we just go back however many years, I remember at Nos in the High Street talking about, I hate to say that I said this. I did say it though. I don't know, 10, 15 years ago. Oh, we're not going to be selling, hemp shoes. And, it's not all about trees. Stupid comments like that. And as time has gone on, obviously our awareness has massively increased. Stupid comments, like I just said, hopefully are non-existent anymore. It started to become a trend, didn't it, to help our planet? Now it's a necessity. But it's those sorts of things that change in our society that now it isn't a nice to have, it's a must have when it comes to our brand. Can you introduce yourself, Jack, and let us know what we're going to be talking about today?
Absolutely, Holly. Firstly, thank you so much for having me on. And
very welcome.
I love, firstly, look at the difference between your background and mine. I'm wearing grey and I've got a grey background. I love this, the lemons and the colour.
It's all about bringing colour to grey.
Absolutely. Honestly, it's really nice. It's brightened my day already. And good. I should say, on the subject of trends, you probably already explained this, but this is where, wearing grey, not looking particularly exciting. I'm definitely going to be talking about macro trends, big ideas.
Big.
Not kind of, trends in terms of what people are wearing, because that is not my specialist area.
Absolutely.
Big
Absolutely.
ideas.
The big ideas, the things that are changing society potentially.
Exactly. And so who am I? I run Insider Trends. So I'm Jack Stratton. I run Insider Trends. We're a retail consultancy, trend spotting consultancy based in London. We work with global brands, basically helping them to spot what's coming next in retail, or at least trying to. Yeah. People call me a retail expert. I don't really think there's such a thing, because no retail experts ever seem to actually accurately predict the future. I think we're all becoming a lot more humble, which is a good thing, and just trying to kind of open up interesting conversations and help big brands, but also smaller ones, to think about the challenges that are coming. But I think that whole idea of retail experts, I always try and immediately remove that and say, look, futurist is the other word. You get lots of people in my world called futurists, like they've got a magic crystal ball to predict the future, and they get it wrong. I've been doing this for a long time. We all get it wrong all the time. So the first thing I offer is some humility. I'm going to offer some ideas, but I am not going to
This
say I'm
is
an expert. That's dangerous.
This is so great. I thought your title was pretty cool already, but the fact that you've got another title you might just pick up called Futurist as well, which is absolutely brilliant. Tell me, can you let me know how you yourself actually and your business, how do you predict sort of the future? Like, what's your sort of points of reference?
Yeah, it's a good question. So what we do, we have a little team of researchers. We're a small business, like I'm sure most of the people on this Instagram live. I should point out
Yes,
straight away.
absolutely, we are.
We're a small business too. So I think, although when I say we work with big brands, you know, our heart is very much with small businesses because we're a small business. So we know actually everything that you're going through. We feel it as well. So we're a small team. But what we do, it's not really an exact science. Some people try to pretend it is, but it isn't. It's very much about mixing quantitative and qualitative information. So data, but also actually speaking to people. So
Yeah.
what we do, a big part of what we do is we travel, and me in particular, I travel all over the world looking at stores. I run retail store tours. I do keynotes in different parts of the world. And I meet a lot of big retailers, big decision makers at big retailers or at e-commerce companies or technology companies,
Yeah.
real estate companies, people who actually are very high up in the food chain and are making the kind of decisions that influence how we buy stuff and what happens. I speak to those people a lot, but also I visit the newest and most important stores, see what's happening. We mix that, so the stuff that we see and we feel, with desk data. So just our researchers constantly looking at all these surveys, you know, so you guys don't have to, because let's face it, they're very boring, most of them. Just reams and reams of data. And that's where there's a little bit of science with spotting patterns or trends. So if we look at 100 surveys and 80 of them say the same thing, we think, well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
It becomes even more interesting when we go, oh, well, the head of that big business is already doing that, as is that business. I went and saw this store in New York and they were doing that. We know that they're also doing that with their store in London. And essentially you just start to build this kind of consensus based on what you're seeing and feeling, how people are reacting, even people in your own life, but then the data as well, all importantly. So when I go and speak to people, I can say, by the way, we know this is happening at scale because we've seen 100,000 people have said they do this or whatever. In a nutshell, that's what it is.
It's bloody fascinating. That's what it is. And tell me, do you yourself sort of you're almost saying like it's joining the dots. So you're taking, you know, let's say society is getting older, and potentially then thus customers are getting older going into shops, and then you're seeing someone in New York catering for that older market, and then someone over here in Tokyo doing exactly the same, and it's been fantastic for their businesses. You're almost bringing those worlds, I don't know if that's an absolute crap example, but those worlds together to actually say, right, this could be something that you need to look to. This is, you know, small businesses how are you going to be catering for that in your organization?
Absolutely, it's exactly that, Holly. So we'll be looking at so take something like you just pointed out, demographic trends, and when there's kind of that tipping point and maybe an aging population in the West is a very good example of this. We see that and we see that data, and then we might be working with, for example, a luxury brand, and we get to know them, and we find out this very established luxury brand that they have, they're doing well, but you know, 80% of their customers are maybe over the age of 50. So then that demographic trend of the aging population, we might go, well, that's good now, but what comes next? What's after that? How are you engaging that next generation? Which, by the way, is something that the established luxury retailers always struggle with. And then we might see what's happening in real world examples. So all of a sudden, I don't know, Gucci are collaborating with Adidas. Why are they doing that? Well, it's quite a heavy-handed attempt to get some young people interested in Gucci, whether it works or not. And then all of a sudden we go, oh, wow, look, all these luxury brands are doing the same thing. They're collaborating with younger people, although all of a sudden they're very active on what you might consider to be younger platforms. So all of a sudden TikTok is flooded with, you know, all that stuff. And of course, they're not actually innately good at that stuff because that's not how their businesses are built. They find it difficult. So they're desperately trying to, you know, and then so essentially what we're doing there is we're looking at what retailers are doing. We're looking at demographic trends, but also we'll be looking at both how maybe those older kind of shoppers are behaving, how they're buying, where they're buying, online and offline, but also younger shoppers as well. And then we put all of that together, and we might then work with a retailer, a traditional luxury retailer, and say, look, here's everything that's happening. And then somewhere within that, we'll probably be able to spot some gaps and some opportunities and that kind of thing.
God, it's fascinating. So tell me, I'm going to read out a few comments before we get into what you're thinking customers are looking for in 2023. So I've got Megan Carrot NY. This is a great conversation to wake up to today. I believe you're in New York. Good morning. Liz Harry Designs, don't tell me colour is out. Liz, it's not out. It's never going to be out. Promise you. Or I'm gonna, don't worry, I'll keep championing colour. Objectables. As a card publisher, we occasionally drop a trend into our designs, but we always try and make them different so that they aren't like everything else, which ends up making them too weird to be trendy. Sprout Interiors, you must be true to yourself when ordering. I only sell what I love and not what's on trend. So before you start, we're going to be talking about, now I know the word, the macro level. So here we have small businesses talking about what they do day to day. So everyone take note now to what Jack's going to be talking about, because this is on the higher point. This is what's going to filter down potentially to what we're going to see in our high streets, potentially to what then consumers are expecting, maybe. So over to you. Let's think about 2023.
Thank you. Yes. So big things that are happening. I think that I'm just going to give 2 or 3 of the biggest things that I think are most interesting to the people here, smaller businesses, smaller business, think about what they can do. The first thing is what's happening in terms of how people are buying online or offline. I think that's a massively important thing to understand where the world is. Very, very broadly, what's happening is in a lot of Western countries, and certainly in the UK, it's happening in the US and most of Europe. E-commerce sales, pure e-com sales for big retailers are plateauing a little bit. So they're not, a lot of people during the pandemic, because we were only buying online, they very quickly predicted the demise or the complete kind of annihilation of the high street, right, in physical retail. Not only has that not transpired, but we're now seeing kind of a little bit of a slow reversal. That's not to say that brands with lots of stores aren't struggling, some are. But there's some very significant things happening. A great example is what happened with Made and Next. If anyone saw that case study. So basically, Made.com as a brand was valued at £800 million because of the brand, right? And because of what they did. And because, let's face it, they were dining out on something that everyone here is already innately brilliant at, which is a sense of independence, a sense of things being quality and authentic. Now, I think Made started to lose that. They got a bit too big. Maybe that sense of that authenticity or that independence was disappearing. But anyway, the brand was strong. It was worth £800 million, but they didn't really have stores. They had a couple of showrooms, but they didn't really invest in the idea of stores. But they tried to grow. They found out that actually stores were a big part of what they were missing. Next then bought Made for £3.4 million, even though a year before they'd been valued at 800 million. Unbelievable bit of business for Next. And what Next are now more than likely going to do is have Made concessions, very much like Habitat in Sainsbury's stores. Next have nearly 500 stores around the UK. And it's the stores that's going to make the Made brand work. This online brand, it found out they needed stores, they needed high street presence. Now, I don't know what everyone on this session is going to be selling and what they're doing, but that's one example, and there are hundreds that show stores remain incredibly relevant in most sectors for exactly that reason, because you need stores often for fulfillment to actually fulfill orders. So Made wanted to scale, but they realized, well, actually, stores were really useful all over the country to pick things up, to return them. Also, they're incredibly important, actually, and this isn't trends, this is something that everyone here knows, that we like to go and see products, we like to touch them, we like to feel them. All the data supports that. Everywhere I visit, I've just been to New York for a big retail conference and looked at New York stores. It's exactly the same there. It's same in London. It's the same everywhere. People want to feel, see those products. They want to speak to people, ideally people that use them, people that know the product really well, maybe even people who've actually made it. Again, people here will know how much people like that. That's what we love about small independent brands. You speak to the person who knows the product. That's magic. And the big brands are realizing they've got to try and do that now at scale, that stores are incredibly relevant. So that's the first thing. At a very high level, stores are remaining very, very relevant, maybe for practical reasons. So click and collect, and what we call in my world omni-channel, which is basically a fancy word for, as a brand, you know, linking your physical channels to your online channels. And e-commerce is plateauing. So lots of brands around the world maybe sell 30%, 40% online, and they're doing great, but they struggle to go completely online because so many of their customers still want to buy in store. So
can I interject onto that one, which
please.
is that I would observe that that is interesting retail. You know, one of the things I think is happening, and please, you're the expert, not me, but that's actually the businesses, the dinosaurs that are dying out are those that aren't making their retail experience interesting. So for instance, someone like Next, that is actually a reason now why I potentially wouldn't go into a Next normally, but I would potentially go into a Next, because now you're making my normal Next more into like a department store. I'm going into Next to buy clothing. Oh, I now can get furniture, but not Next furniture, made furniture. And so actually it's just that refreshment that is required, and if the brands are smart enough, that's what they're going to do to be able to handle their 500 stores, etc., etc. But those who aren't doing that, you know, with those who aren't doing that, we're seeing the decline of those. You know, I think about Paper Chase and what's happened there, and the absolute scam in what's gone on there. But you know, again, brands that have never, Debenhams, those that have just never moved with the times to understand that actually it's not the physical store that's dead, it's what you're giving us as an experience that could die, and if it dies, we're not coming into your store.
Absolutely. You've helped me to kind of beautifully segue into my next point, Holly, because
I got the script. I didn't really have one, but it's just it's the Jack and Holly double act here.
Yeah, it really is. What you were just mentioning there, and the Paper Chase is a perfect example of this as well. What is going on? We've talked to clients about this in the past, and we use this incredibly basic kind of framework or way of looking at all of this, but that is almost always true. And we said years ago, it's one of the few things that I think we ever got right, is that the future of retail is very simply about two things, and that's fast experiences or slow experiences. We saw right at the beginning when e-commerce took off, what that was about, and what e-commerce is still about most of the time. E-com is about speed and convenience. So again, when we're crunching the numbers and looking at data, for all the different things that are going on, what still seems to matter to customers above all else? Convenience is still the thing. Speed is still the thing. And especially now with recessions emerging all over the world, very closely related cost. Okay, so e-com still does well, and retail experiences in general where they are fast. You know, basically where people are or brands are designing out, you know, any kind of friction within a buying journey. So that can be buying something quickly online. That could even be an automated checkout. I mean, I don't know if anyone's been in, a great example of this is Uniqlo stores in now. Most of them will have 90% kind of self-checkouts, and then the staff.
Oh, I didn't know that. I need to go into one.
It's really impressive. They're kind of like RFID chip enabled, which basically means you just throw your clothes or whatever you bought onto this scanner or this machine, and it automatically detects what you've got. So you're in and out really quickly. It seems like a small thing, but it's meant that they can process things even quicker in their incredibly busy stores. You see this everywhere, online and offline. The most successful brands are making certain parts of the experience really, really fast. Super relevant to everyone on this. You should know that, you know, on your e-com platform, 1 or 2 seconds faster for a page to load will speed up and improve your conversion, will probably make people return. It's so important. At the exact same time, and what's often ignored, we as customers, we love slow experiences, right?
Yes.
Why do people still like going to John Lewis stores? Why, you know, why is that still happening? Most of the time it's because there's a guy in the electronics department who's really good at explaining why that speaker does whatever it does. Yeah. It's that slow thing. You go and talk to the guy about it. Slow experiences are so important. And we can look at that in loads of different ways, but physical spaces are amazing at slow because they can solve problems. They're great for service. They're great for experience. They're great for learning about your brand. They're great for developing the kind of, you know, your staffing and your training. You can do all kinds of stuff. But that fast and slow is what retail is all about, online or offline, and that's relevant to anyone, the tiniest business to the biggest one. It's how can you design your business and every point in the customer journey to be either fast or slow, or sometimes maybe both. And if you look at the best businesses in the world, that's what they do. It's boring to use the example of Nike or Apple, but honestly, look at how everything works in those businesses, in store or online. It's either absolutely rapid when you want it to be rapid, or fantastic, human, soft, cuddly, friendly when you want it to be soft. That's the whole thing. And as you mentioned, Holly, all the businesses that fail, it's too easy to just go Amazon killed and then pick your example, BHS years ago or any of them. Actually, they were mediocre brands. They weren't fast or slow. Totally mediocre.
You know, my theory, and I might be too optimistic. Now, listen, Amazon has obliterated certain, you know, think about the small independent bookshop, think about, you know, those sorts of things. But you look at BHS, for instance, you know, they didn't deserve to have a brand that was still alive in a way. You know, that's my point. You know, having a brand is, I always liken having a business to being a parent. You cannot have your eye off the ball at any point in time. It is a living, breathing thing that has to grow with time. It has to be nurtured. It has to be innovative. It has to be soulful. It has to be all of these things. But I love how you're saying it, the fast and the slow. And I do think your Apple example is true. You know, how can a brand that I can literally spend thousands of pounds online in the most clever way instantly if I wanted to, and then I go into the Apple store and I literally speak to a human who, by the way, will spend 1 hour with me, and you're just like, how can you even do that? Well, that's because the two things, you know, work in harmony. My son's just had his 18th, and we went to Selfridges, and this was about a year and a half ago. We were trying to be cool. We weren't trying to be cool parents, by the way. We weren't going to spend any money in Selfridges, but we were going down the escalator, and there was this gentleman at the bottom of the escalator in the tech part of Selfridges, which, by the way, is very dangerous if you like gadgets. And they had like this, I don't know how to even call it. Look, I'm going to sound so uncool. I don't even know what to call it. It's like one of these massive, not a jukebox, because that's like from my era. It's like one of these bass, massive speakers that apparently you can take to a rave, and the entire rave would be based on this one speaker. Anyway, they were playing MC Hammer, and he was really cranking it up, and the whole thing has all these colors and everything like that. And I said to Frank, obviously slightly dancing, oh my God, that's amazing. But it was the experience. I was coming down these escalators, there's a gentleman waiting there, and he said, he could see I was looking and maybe dancing a bit. And he said, would you like to know more about this speaker? Now, I was not coming to Selfridges for that speaker, but because he took the time, he then sold me the whole thing. It does all of these things. We said, right, we're going to be the best parents ever. Do you want the small one, the big one? I was like, the big one. And at his 18th, a year and a half later, there it is, everyone thinking it's absolutely brilliant. And I thought that was the slow experience there, because and what it's done for me as a brand for Selfridges has cemented Selfridges as a place. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's got that the nicety of John Lewis plus the trend that I might have got from maybe Conran, or I don't know, but it's that mix. And that's just an example, isn't it, of slow retail working magic.
And it really, really does. And when you look at that, you know, even some of my favorite kind of newest brands around the world, that's what they're getting right. And it's different for every company. It's different in every industry, where it's fast and where it's slow. The other thing that they'll understand, these kinds of brands, and this is really relevant as well, and a really important trend, is understanding that what we call digitally native brands and customers are much better with this. Understanding that the buying can happen at any time and in any channel. So you might have a brilliant store experience that's a really important part of the buying process, right? But the experience in the store might not lead to a sale there and then. Too many companies, frankly, especially the mediocre ones, are still, you know, having staff on a commission that means they push them to buy there, and they think the only way of measuring success is if someone buys there and then. The truth is, you had that experience, Holly, and actually you might not have bought there and then, but it doesn't mean you're not going to buy there and then, nor does it mean you're not going to tell a load of other people that makes them go and have that experience. And the value of that is massive. So it's actually measuring success in lots of different ways, having faith that a great experience that doesn't lead there and then to a sale is still worth it in the long run. Again, I think small businesses personally are normally much better at that because you're closer to your customers. So you can actually see that happening.
Can just on that Selfridges thing, and then I want to read some comments, and then before you get to your next point, is that I would never have bought the speaker on Selfridges website because it's not that very good. It's really doesn't keep up with the experience I had in store, and that's the mistake, isn't it? You know, where these channels are not consistently at a certain level. I would expect Selfridges site to be phenomenal after that experience, and it just isn't. So that's where we can let our brands down. Let me just read out a few comments. Gabriella Buckingham, yes, we do still need slow experiences, not just to consult with people, but we don't feel pressure all the time, you know, just generally as a society. The Set Two Hands UK, I have customers in my physical shop that spend over half an hour just browsing and chatting about each design that they buy. Emily Lisbeth Jewelry, Tiffany have just currently collaborated with Nike. Nike High, I thought was random, but now I understand it. Absolutely. You look at Gucci mixing with North Face. You look at, you know, so many things are actually happening at the moment. Orna Hand Painter, love Uniqlo checkouts. Tiny TS Theatre, thanks for this, Holly and Jack. So interesting. I'm feeling the need to find new inspiration for trends to excite my audience in 2023. These Two Hands UK, my online sales have mostly disappeared, but my tiny shop has got much busier. So I'm definitely seeing this trend towards action. Mayor Joy Designs, this is fascinating. Ambo Tanical saying my store in Shoreditch is doing much better than my sales online, which, by the way, when I went to Top Drawer and I spoke to a lot of small businesses, they actually said when they had physical stores or they were wholesaling to physical stores, that everybody over Christmas, and I think it might have been driven by the Royal Mail strikes helping that, saw a lot more activity in store. Whereas you're right, in COVID time, we thought it was literally going to be a tumbleweed scenario. So Jack, take us on to the next thing that we should know about 2023.
I think something I'm really conscious about at the moment with sharing with people is the kind of reality surrounding customer shopping habits in terms of sustainability and in terms of cost. So the big question with lots of our customers at the moment is, you know, is this the year where customers will really consistently pay more for sustainable items for ethically sourced items and whatever? Now, what I just think I need to exercise a kind of, I don't know, word of caution on these points, because there's so much data and so many surveys and so many experts rightly talking about the fact that customers will spend more on sustainability, care a lot about sustainability. Absolutely, that's true. But purely an example, I read one the other day that said in fast fashion, or in the topic of fashion, customers were about 60% more likely to shop with sustainable brands than non-sustainable ones. That's what they said, right? That's what customers are saying every year. At the exact same time, fast fashion is growing globally by about 15% each year. That's about $20 billion. That means very simply, there's a big difference between what we're saying and what we're doing. There just is. And I don't want to single anyone out or any brands out, because it's a redundant conversation to say fast fashion is terrible, we need to get rid of it. I mean, it is terrible, but also it exists, and we exist in a culture that builds it. So it's a redundant conversation. We have to work with what we have. And I think it's really, the first thing I have to say is we have to recognize that what's underneath what I just told you, the difference between saying and doing, is that actually all your customers, everyone that's on this call now, all your customers, I think ultimately they want two things. I honestly think people are innately good. I think people want to shop sustainably. They do. They want ethically sourced products. They don't want, you know, a slave trade existing within whatever they're buying. Of course they don't. At the same time, we're all very worried about the state of the world. We're all struggling. Everyone is, well, bar a very tiny fraction of people who we don't need to discuss. Everyone is struggling, and the cost of living is a very real challenge to everyone, and we're already seeing that. So people are very price conscious. So the truth is, I think people are both things. They want to do things sustainably, but they also need to save money. So my challenge here is, I think everyone on this session really needs to think about how you can do both. And I know that seems like an impossible nut to crack, but that has to be the goal. How can you try and help people to make sustainable decisions, but also keep things affordable? That's the only way it's going to work. And I think there's loads of ways in which you can do that. I really believe that. And I'll give a couple of practical examples. I don't know, I'm sure everyone is really familiar with Wolf and Badger, for example, or like I can think of, you know, lots of similar, and actually indeed not on the high street, you do this brilliantly, I think. There's loads of companies like it. And I'll see what I really like is a simple thing that I'm seeing emerge more and more, which is at the point of buying, which is a really important thing, right when we're looking at an item and making our decisions, I'm noticing that there's an increase in really giving us information about where an item has been made. Who is the maker? What are they doing? What does their supply chain look like? I think that's a brilliant and incredibly important thing. Transparency, respecting the intelligence of your customer, giving them all of that information. Because lots of these retailers now, Wolf and Badger did this, they said they're now seeing without question that actually that is helping to convert people. It's making people more likely to buy something when they get the more information about supplier, about their transparency, about how ethical the sourcing is. So that's one example. Re-commerce is definitely something else I think that's relevant to everyone. To me, it's one of those kind of best of both worlds things. By re-commerce, I mean resale, repair, whether you create your own little marketplace for reselling goods. I like that. I like re-commerce as an idea because I think you can charge for it, you can make money from it, but it is automatically a business model that's good for the planet by its very nature. This is exploding. Everyone knows all about resale, but I'll say that I think anything you can do around that, creating it within your own business. There's a couple of things happening now which are great for small business because they're literally plugins. So I tell everyone to look up something called Beni, B-E-N-I. It's an amazing thing, and it basically is a kind of a plug-in to a search engine so that when your customer is looking for an item, it can tell them if there's a second-hand version of that item automatically. It's amazing. That's the kind of technology now that's emerging that can almost automate the kind of resale process, which I think is fantastic. So there's lots of cool stuff happening in that realm. Again, I think it's important to say it doesn't solve the bigger issue. So as I read, someone said the other day, I thought this was a brilliant point to make. When a fast fashion brand does resale, actually there's a cynical side to that because the real problem is that they release too much product and they create too much product. Reselling it doesn't solve the problem, right? It's kind of just
you're still producing it.
Exactly. You're moving around the furniture on the Titanic. It's frustrating but I think among smaller companies it's fantastic, and I think everyone here, resale is exactly, I'm sure loads of you do it already, but it's a wonderful thing because you're not overproducing almost certainly. And merely that's just going to kind of create a nice closed loop. And of course, small businesses can actually do closed loop. Big businesses can't. They talk about it, but you guys can. And the only other point I would say on this, if you're interested in how bigger businesses are tackling this bigger issue around sustainability, I've noticed a big shift actually around just how it's communicated. So I'm noticing brands are talking less about sustainability and more, and I think it's a good thing, about transparency and about responsibility. And I think that's because finally brands are starting to recognize that sustainability is a very complex, loaded term. Brands aren't clear what they even mean by sustainability. The greatest minds of the planet haven't gotten even close to solving this issue. So frankly, why are Adidas going to solve it with some new pair of sneakers, right? And I think brands are starting to have more humility, much more humility around this, which is a really good thing. Again, I think small businesses are so much better at this anyway. But I think that if you want to look at strategically how you might want to position what you're doing in terms of sustainability, I think really think about terms like transparency and responsibility, because I think that's speaking to a smarter customer in a much more positive way. It's not saying, look, we're going to solve this problem. Instead, it's saying, we don't expect you to believe that we're going to solve this. What we're saying is we're going to start opening this up. We're going to be transparent. We're going to be honest, and we're going to work on this together, even inviting your customers in to contribute their ideas. That's the language I'd really encourage you to look at, because if you look at some of the bigger brands who are doing well around this, you notice someone, I mean, they have their fair share of critics, but they still do incredibly well. You look at a big business doing well out of sustainability, Lush are a great example. And Lush talk constantly about transparency and responsibility. And I think it's very, very smart, because they know that customers see through if they say, look, we're going to be carbon neutral by 2030 and we've solved it, guys, we've won the battle. No one likes that anymore. It's like, instead they're talking about transparency.
This is just, everyone's saying how much this is helping them. I would just say for small businesses, you know, I remember interviewing Petalon, who, yes, Petalon, I always get, gosh, don't go there. Anyway, Petalon, who do amazing flowers. Florence said, you know, actually, you know, we're not perfect yet. You know, that's the thing. It's actually, we treat our customers with respect and we take them along with the journey on where we're looking to get to. And I always just was picturing someone walking into a shop and looking at a label on a product. And wouldn't it be amazing if that label had changed to 2023 and it said, last year, this hairbrush was made out of X wood. This year, we've increased the price by £2, but we have cut down, or this is recycled wood. It has meant that your £2 has stopped us cutting down X amount of trees. Like actually treating people and telling them the story. And I always talk, you know, we always talk about this depth of brand. Let people in, depth of brand. You've all got it, small businesses. You've got the story that the big businesses try and make up all the time. You know, the fact you're a small business, already you are far more sustainable than a bigger business. But so that's your brand story. But secondly, taking your customers along for the journey. And as Jack's saying, talk about where you want to go. Take the, you know, look at the journey that you're going to go on. What would you want to do this year and next year? Ask people to join you on that, and do not do the greenwashing. You know, I think, Jack, probably a lot of people also, I don't want to be cynical, have like pulled their socks up on this because they're getting sued for greenwashing.
Absolutely.
And you know, you take very big fast fashion companies, they're in major trouble because they were jumping on the sustainable bandwagon and not being able to back it up. And this word sustainable, basically legally, you just don't use it, anyone, because it actually means nothing. And now your customers have caught on to that. So it's far better to be really specific. This hairbrush was made out of this wood. It's now recycled wood. You know, we were using this much energy last year. We're now using this much. This is toxic free. This, you know, this paint is X. It's almost, isn't it, just letting people in rather than using these massive words that the customers have now caught. Yeah, they've caught up, haven't they?
Absolutely, they really have. And I think this is what's so interesting in terms of a small business community is this is an example, and it happens quite often, of where essentially the biggest brands in the world are desperately trying to kind of get what small businesses do innately.
Yeah.
So, and can do very easily from the beginning. So what I'm noticing a lot at the moment is big brands like H&M, they are trying to go back to the beginning and make their supply chain, next doing the same thing, make their supply chain, make everything they do completely transparent and visible. Now, as you can imagine, that is a complete nightmare. They don't really want to do it because the skeletons in the cupboards are all coming out. It's not going to be good, because it doesn't take a genius to work out that if you're buying a t-shirt for £3, that somewhere along the line someone's suffering. It doesn't work. They don't want to make the supply chain transparent, but they know that the customer's too intelligent now, that they see through it, so they don't have a choice. So they're trying to do, and all I would say is what everyone on this call probably innately can do very easily is be transparent, because you're small and your supply chain's small, right? And I would say, as you grow in the coming years, keep sight of that. And from the very beginning, right now, build transparency into what you do into the supply chain. Show everyone everything, because as you get bigger, you'll still want to do that. Don't fall into the trap.
And it holds you yourself as a founder accountable. Do you know what I mean? You set up, you know, I was speaking to the founder of Dishoom, and he, you know, for every meal they sell, they give away 2 breakfasts. He said, if we had done that now, today, 10 years into the business, there is no way that would have passed the financial board, because it costs far too much money. But because they set up the brand doing it, It's something that they have to hold themselves accountable for, which is actually an amazing part. Let me, before we conclude, Jack, let me just read out some comments. Number 95, the conversation is gold. Thank you so much, Jack. My head is spinning. Copper top cards. I always say that craft markets are always about the after sales as well as on the day. Correct. So make sure, guys, your sites and your interaction after a physical interaction is as good as when they actually met you physically. New phase design is about managing expectations. Chloe Hayward, London, my tagline is sustainable accessories that don't cost the earth. Upcycle rules. I like that line. That's quite a very good thing.
That's
Ellie,
great.
cartilage designs. I found when I've done markets, people enjoy that when items say made in the UK. People are looking for British, more made sustainable products, it seems. Serendipity Sea Crafts. I'm a beach clean artist. Pick up everyone's rubbish from the beaches and I make it into pictures and cards. We've got Gabriella Buckingham. Love that. Depth of brand. This is certainly making me think. And Norfolk Retro. Sometimes as businesses, we assume people understand the cost implications in trying to be sustainable, but they often don't. Once you break down costs, they are surprised. Norfolk Retro, you know, some of the great companies, who was it that did this? They actually showed you, oh God, I can't remember who it was, and maybe Jack, you can help me here. They actually showed the breakdown. So you go onto a product page and they would actually show, this was the cost of manufacturing. This is how much it costs me to, you know, make this. This is how much it costs us to buy this paint. I'm making that bit up, but you know what I mean? They actually break it down.
Yeah,
so when you're paying it, you absolutely know this is not sending the founder to go and buy their first yacht. It's allowing people to see that. And I thought, gosh, that is such a brave, brilliant move. But that was years ago, and that's transparency.
Yeah, do you know there's sorry to jump in just very quickly, Holly, before I forget. A couple of good examples to look up for something you could, you know, if you were interested in doing this on your e-com platforms or whatever. Allbirds, the kind of sneaker manufacturers, and Everlane, the US clothing company. They both do exactly that. So what they do when you go onto product pages, they show you the carbon footprint of a product, the supply chain, but also the cost in making it. Wow. And they've both said, and loads of other businesses have said, there's a direct correlation between giving that information and justifying a higher price. Yes. So I think it really does work. Yes. And that's where we come back to the beginning of the conversation, you know, buyers that are caring about saving money and sustainability. Well, maybe it's about value for money rather than being, you know, we know you can't be cheap and sustainable, but you can offer value. So you have to show them the value is the thing.
And, you know, for small businesses, obviously, you know, the whole point is that you are not as cheap as chips. You've got your salaries, you've got your teams, you've got to be sustainable in what you're purchasing. You've got your overheads. We've got everything going here. You've got the quality of your craftsmanship. This is what people want. Explain it to them, break it down, and guess what? You will be able to, you know, charge that higher price. That means finally you might get paid this year. Jack, tell me, what are some, God, I could talk to you forever. Everyone, can I just, before we conclude, tell your handle is at Insider Trends, and everyone should follow you. Do you give out sort of snippets of gold dust on your Instagram?
Absolutely, yeah, we do. But to be honest, the best thing is, follow us on Instagram and just, I'd say, just read our blog. So we do roundups of the most interesting retail stuff going on in the world constantly. Kirsty, our head writer, is amazing. So just read those.
And I read it, and it's so good. And I just had to, all my emails culled, and you're one of the emails I haven't culled. So I would absolutely say to everyone, definitely get it. So just tell me, before you go, you just been to New York? Who's inspiring you at the moment? What would be your sort of top 3 people inspiring you?
I'm going to give a couple of unusual examples, but just because I've loved them so much. So I went to two different kind of toy stores that have completely changed my idea about, in that sector, for example, kids' toys, how or what the future is going to be. So it was, one store was Camp. They have a few stores in the US, and another brand was Slumu, who make slime. both places, what was amazing was I'd challenge anyone to go in there and think of it being a store. It's more like walking into a kind of kids theme park, but they are retail stores. And it was genius. So in the case of camp, there's like a secret door and you go in and there's a whole giant kids play area. It's absolutely amazing. In Slumu, they've got right in the center of kind of downtown New York, there's a huge play area where kids can kind of jump on piles of slime and are just going crazy. In Slumu and camp, they're charging for these experiences, right? But then as you come out, obviously you buy stuff, and then online you're buying stuff over and over. And it made me think about retail really differently. And what I've started, what I call this is experience first design. It's obviously less relevant for online, but for stores, I love it, because what they've done, you can see what they've done is they haven't gone, let's let's make our retail store and put some fun stuff in it, right? Like I'm sure everyone here has seen that, where you go in a clothing shop and there's some coffee in the corner and they think that's experience. It's not experience.
Or an iPad, or an
iPad,
you know,
right?
Whatever.
You're just plugging something in. But in these stores, I was like, yeah, these are experiences that have some products around them, and it completely changes the dynamic. They were the two busiest spaces in New York that I saw all day long, packed, incredibly busy. And I thought of Hamleys, I thought of Lego, I thought of all the big toy brands, and I thought, wow, they are really missing a trick. And I would say that for, you know,
because also when I had my store before we closed it down, obviously not talking same, funny enough, Hamleys and Little Holly and Co coffee shop, but the point is that when I spoke to this community about it, I said that our shop is actually, the cost of our shop is on our marketing line. It is a marketing outlet. So if you think about that slime company, so they're saying, right, these are all the costs attributed to running this store. What if we charged everyone to use our product and actually mitigated or helped the cost of the store before they've even then bought the product? And then because of the experience that they've already paid for, they're going to be more vested in the brand, and then they'll buy so much slime at the end, which has probably doubled the conversion right at the end. So you've got this double win happening under one roof, right? Very smart. And when I went into Harrods this weekend, you know, and I went to their store, their children's department, which, you know, famously is meant to be very good. I just literally thought, how old-fashioned is this? I mean, it's got the kit, but there's nothing. Do you know what I mean? Even Hamleys now. Now you've said that, you could walk into Hamleys, and just because they've got a flying UFO that some guy is twiddling his thumb on a remote control, it could think what it could be.
Completely. And this is the thing. Get your head into the idea of the customer. The customer is the kid. A kid doesn't understand toy stores because they're all just, I have young children, and they're looking at all this product boxed up. It makes no sense. They just want to play. So it's a play area. A toy store should be a play area with some products around the edge, and that's it. And to your point, Holly, the only other thing I would say I'm seeing loads of, which I love, is exactly what you just described. Stores being basically put in the marketing budget and used for marketing purposes, creating content, PR, storytelling. I love that, and that's happening everywhere. And there's some great examples. And obviously, I think a lot of people on this call will be UK based. Next time you're in London, anyone, there's a store called, and it's very interesting, it's called Amy, or a brand, they're called Amy Leon Dore, AIME Leon Dore. They're a fairly small brand. They're kind of part of this new and emerging kind of, I'm calling it like kind of skate luxury brand. So like Kith, for example, Palace Skateboard Supreme, basically very, very kind of Gen Z focused product where jumpers cost like 200 quid. It's fascinating because it's insanely expensive, luxury price, but it doesn't look luxury. And what the stores do is they kind of build the atmosphere of cool and luxury. And go to the Amy Leon Dore store. It's in Soho, opened fairly recently. And it's that. No one's really buying anything, but the staff are incredibly cool. The interiors are really kind of odd. They've got this amazing cafe around the side. And it's fascinating being inside it because you think, wow, this is not a normal retail store experience. And it's because they've designed it as marketing, not to sell stuff, because they know they're going to sell online. So interesting to see that, and lots for, I think, people to learn on this call. And I know not everyone on this call, by the way, will have a physical space and will just be selling online. But I think it will be interesting to look at that over the next years, and do consider as well pop-up. There's some really interesting pop-up providers now who are much cheaper than they used to be. So you get companies like Souk, SOOK, who are renting out spaces where you can basically be in London by the hour. You can rent to be on Oxford Street for like a couple of hours, literally. So if you think pop-up is maybe your physical retail is too expensive, I would say don't rule it out. There are places where you can, beyond trade fairs and everything else.
Jack, you've got to come back. Will you come back before Christmas?
Yeah, of course I will. Yeah,
I would love to have you back. I could just sit
yeah.
here for hours talking to you about this. This is just a sweet spot for all of us. We absolutely love it. You've been so articulate and really hit some of the points that everyone is saying here. This has been so helpful today. The coffee shop colouring book, Natty Deco, so helpful and inspiring. Smithery Space, really enjoyed this. We have been shouting about this for 7 years. I'm so glad it's now a trend. I think that's about sustainability. Ellie Cartledge Design need this more in shopping centres. Less would be shutting down if they just focused more on the experience. Caroline Kahn, coach, really useful conversation. The sustainability conversation is going to be useful for some of my clients. Thank you very much. And Norfolk Retro, quick question if I can, we've got a minute. Is there a website we can use to work out the carbon footprint of what we sell?
That's a very good point. Website where you could.
Don't worry, you can.
Can I
think about it? Would you let me know?
Can I send this after, and would you be able to send this out to everyone?
Absolutely.
Because I can't. There definitely are. I just don't want to give something that's incorrect.
Absolutely.
I'll ping it over.
Team. We're going to ask Jack. We're going to get Norfolk Retro. We're going to connect this information. Jack, thank you so much. I'm going to let you go. You've been awesome. And yeah, I love the slime. I'm going to New York just to jump on
the slime. We've got to go. Slowly. Yeah, it's super fun. You're allowed to. It's mostly kids, but look, I went in there, so it's fine.
Okay, good. Take care, my love. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Well, what an amazing session that was. And everybody, I'm here every 2 weeks, thanks to Dell Technologies. My partner, I wanted to say in crime there's no crime being committed, except bringing you information that you wouldn't necessarily readily be able to get your hands on. Lots of love to you all. And thank you, Jack, again, for such amazing trend insights. We've had our own crystal ball. Lots of love.